Members of the media, good afternoon and thank you for being here. I'm pleased to announce that the Bermuda government has completed its first ever pre-budget report, and the report is available for download on the government website at www.gov.bm. Bermuda has an opportunity. Although there is widespread global uncertainty about the state of the world economy, in Bermuda we're not powerless in charting our future. We have to constructively engage more and to pioneer some innovative solutions. And that is how we position ourselves as an entrepreneurial and 21st century Bermuda. The people have a real stake and their input is valued. Accordingly, in my capacity as Minister of Finance, I'm introducing a pre-budget statement. This is part of the ongoing strategic planning process for the 2012-13 budget, and it further evidences my stated commitment to the Open Budget Initiative. Now, this process has a number of advantages. One of the most important is that increased public participation and more transparency helps to better inform the people and enables the public to have directed input into what are the most important spending priorities for them. What does the Bermuda they wish look like, and where do they see the best value for money and the best spend for their dollars? If I had to distill into a couple of sentences what the pre-budget statement is doing, it is this. It is setting the context. It is also designing a toolbox of alternative strategies ahead of time. And this is to better prepare the government to anticipate whatever may come its way. I'm not going to read the 30-page document to you, to huge sighs of relief, clearly, but I would like to put it into an appropriate context and explain some of the information it contains. In February 2011, during my national budget statement to the House, I committed the government to developing an open budget process. The open budget process hopes to foster greater public participation and clarity in budget decisions. Budgets are not just numbers on a page, they're about our people, and governments are here to serve the people. And it's important that the citizenry are informed about the budget process and understand what it means to them. It affects lives, budgets affect business, and they affect our children and our retirees. In short, it affects all of us, and it's vital that the people are educated about the formulation of our country's budget. The International Budget Partnership states that open budgets transform lives. And it's my hope that this open budget process not only transforms lives, but also transforms the conversation. The government intends that through the open budget process, our citizens will have a better understanding of the choices. A better understanding of these choices by policymakers and citizens alike will raise the level of debate and lead to better, more informed decisions. And let me say at the outset that the report itself fulfills two broad functions. It is clearly part of the preparation for Budget 2012-2013. It is also a key component of the multi-year open budgeting process that I said we would be adopting earlier this year. More strategically, it is part of the government's process for introducing a medium-term expenditure framework, or NTEF, governing the preparation of future annual budgets. Additionally, this work, which is the result of considerable effort by several government departments, the Assistant, Acting Financial Secretary, Mr. Manders, who sits to my right, as well as Senator Burt, the Junior Minister of Finance. And they have worked tirelessly and long hours in putting the budget report together, and I think certainly I want to acknowledge and thank them for that. But it marks our continued process towards increased transparency in economic planning and represents an unprecedented departure from previous annual budget processes. Let me give you some examples of this departure from the norm. The pre-budget report proposes the stress testing of budget settings, and the aim here is to model a range of alternative revenue outcomes. And this includes testing public revenue assumptions in the event of further deterioration in the global economic crisis. Clearly, this is something that anyone wants to see happening, but it is critical that we think about it now and have an idea of the likely impact and options for how we may want to respond. The report also investigates the function and dependencies of various economic levers. For example, the relationship between budgetary measures that stimulate the economy to compensate for softening demand and measures that help ensure we maintain a sustainable debt-to-GDP ratio. The pre-budget report also makes an important contribution to the debate surrounding one of Bermuda's principal economic challenges, and I refer here to what the report describes as the predicament of being sandwiched between volatile revenues and structural rigidity on the expenditure side. Growth in absolute debt levels is a serious challenge for all governments. Bermuda is no exception, despite our favorable standing in international comparisons of debt to GDP. It is even more of a challenge to address this during the course of a single year. The pre-budget report explains that the 2012-2013 budget will be prepared as part of a fiscal strategy designed to address volatility over an extended period of time, rather than in a single year. Further, the pre-budget report observes that while Bermuda doesn't have a debt crisis, the revenue volatility and the structural rigidity on the expenditure side is nonetheless a cause for concern. However, in tackling this concern, the document warns and sets out the challenge of a trade-off between budget support for job creation and budget cuts to reduce indebtedness. The pre-budget report has a great deal to say on the subject of budgeting for uncertainty. It says, for example, that some countries have decided that fiscal rules such as debt ceilings should be observed over the course of an economic cycle rather than during a one-year budget horizon. The Bermuda government's view is that we wish to set out how the plan over time to reduce the long-term debt is, and accordingly the development of a medium-term expenditure framework together with a program of efficiency savings are being recommended to enable us to achieve the fiscal consolidation and to contain expenditures. By developing forward estimates of the cost of core government policies, we believe we'll be able to reduce that part of budget spending which is effectively locked in. Now, since a major objective of the open budget process is to stimulate widespread discussion of budget choices, the report does invite feedback on a series of policy options under consideration for inclusion in the 2012-2013 budget. These include harmonizing the duty on personal imports, possible changes to the betting tax, increases in the so-called sin taxes on alcohol and tobacco, a tax break for owners of fuel-efficient vehicles, a rollback of certain tax concessions introduced to assist businesses and meet social policy objectives, levying a land tax on vacant land, and creating a local debt market, an initiative which could widen Bermuda dollar investment choices and stimulate greater economic activity. I should emphasize that these are policy options at this time. Public discussion on a range of priorities is encouraged, and the ultimate decisions will form part of the 2012-13 budget. Now, in addition to technical improvements in the budgeting process, the open budget approach affords all stakeholders an opportunity for input while providing a better understanding of the factors driving the government's budget policy decisions. So, in short, the pre-budget report outlines the government's multi-year strategy for weathering the storm. It spells out what this means for the 2012-2013 budget and where we're likely to stand in 4 years' time. More specifically, it reviews the public revenue implications of international volatility for Bermuda and the decisions facing the government about how to trade off stimulatory budget settings. So, in a snapshot, mid-year review of the Bermuda economy, the report confirms that previously anticipated impact of our decision to lower payroll tax. As a result, revenues for the first 6 months to September 30th dropped $45 million to $421 million. We estimate total revenue for the year to come at about $930 million. Government current spending, excluding debt service, was $480 million. That's approximately $29 million lower than the comparable period last year. Capital spending for the first 6 months was $28 million, which is $25.7 million lower than the comparable period last year. However, despite these reductions, the impact of the continuing weak economic climate is such that we estimate current account expenditure will finish the year at about $950 million, which will be some $43 million above estimates provided in the budget. However, despite the economic slowdown, Bermuda's current balance of payments, current account, remains solid. This is largely due to a surplus of $511 million in the first half of 2011, compared to a surplus of $288 million during the same period in 2010. Tourist arrivals and spending data indicate increased levels of activity, while the international business and financial services sector remains stable. The construction industry benefited from work commenced on the King Edward Memorial Hospital, which pushed new project starts to $520 million for the first half of the year, against $11.5 million in 2010. At $500 million, the hospital project is the biggest ever undertaken. I hope I've given you an insight by that snapshot on the work we've undertaken on this important pre-budget aspect of our move to multi-year open budgeting. Before I conclude my remarks, I certainly would like to draw your attention to a section in the document that deals with expenditure flexibility. Now, this discusses the role of different types of efficiency savings and explains why some departments have experienced difficulties in implementing cuts. Part of the problem has been a mismatch of the budget cycle and the time needed to implement savings, plus the government policy of not eliminating permanent posts, since this would be counterproductive in the present economic climate. The pre-budget report recommends a two-pronged approach to tackling these issues, which includes a multi-year program of efficiency savings in ministry's core activities and the formation of an efficiency team comprising staff from the Cabinet Office, Ministry of Finance, and the private sector. This team will work under my direction to ensure that bureaucratic waste is reduced. I've often spoken about doing more with less, and this government remains committed to being more efficient with its resources. However, we must now look at how we can do less with less. Government cannot be everything to everyone. We're a country of finite resources, and we need to make sure that our spending is directed to the places where it has the most benefit to our society and our future. And there are some times when government should get out of the way. In closing, I would like to say that this pre-budget report represents a major step forward in budget preparation and the formulation of budget policy in Bermuda. We're proud of the numerous improvements in good governance that we've seen under our term, but joining the Open Budget Initiative and giving a commitment to open transparency represents the achievement of another major milestone on our journey towards better governance. We certainly invite feedback on this document, and in addition to electronic communication, we will be holding public meetings in January 2012 to discuss the principles laid out in this document and to solicit public feedback. Comments can be mailed to openbudget@gov.bm. I welcome your questions. Thank you.